Hello, and welcome back to J.P.'s World of Wrestling. Yes, that's right, I am your man J.P., and I've got one more original San Francisco toy makers to show you, action figure, but before you'll notice once again, I'm in like the different backdrop that I normally am. I mean, you can kind of see my normal one on that side, but you can see another one on that side. It's tough to tell what my favorite movie is. Hmm? Anyway, so last time I showed you Kevin Sullivan. So now I've got one more original San Francisco toy maker WCW figure, and it's my favorite one that I have, and I'm going to show it to you right now. This is Sting, obviously. This is a pretty good figure. I like Sting. In fact, the picture for my channel is me holding it like this, or something like that. Anyway, but any wrestling fan that's been watching wrestling for the past 30, 20 years knows Sting. They know his story. You know, he broke into the business kind of with the Ultimate Warrior. They were a tag team. They trained together and they were brought into the business together. But then, and they were in like I think Global Wrestling Federation. But then they kind of split up, went their separate ways. The Warrior, of course, went to WWF. But Sting, he went to the NWA, and he took a completely different career path than the Ultimate Warrior. Sting was actually willing to listen and learn and be in the ring with guys that can teach him. And he became very, very popular. He was extremely popular, especially like the late 80s, early 90s. WCW itself wasn't overly popular, but Sting, he was voted, I think, the most popular wrestler of like 1991 or something like that from Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So, yeah, so Sting was kind of one of the top guys in WCW. This was the Surfer Sting. And then when Hogan came in, he kind of got pushed to the side a little bit, and Hogan was the top guy, so Sting kind of got pushed aside. But after a while, especially when Hogan joined the NWO, Sting at that time started to grow his hair out long, and he started to paint his face white and paint his face up like The Crow, the movie The Crow with Brandon Lee. But so then Sting started to hang out in the rafters, and then he started kind of looking down, sort of in mourning for the WCW that he knew, because the WCW was running amok and they were just slowly destroying the WCW. But then finally, Sting started making appearances. He started chopping the NWO down one at a time, and he finally got to face Hulk Hogan. They did this long storyline where WCW management kept telling Sting, "Hey, Sting, if you come back and wrestle, we'll give you we'll give you guys from the NWO." Then they offered him Vincent. He rejected that. They offered him Big Bubba. He rejected that. They offered him Buff Bagwell. He rejected that. So finally, he made it clear that he wanted Hollywood Hogan in a championship match. So WCW made it happen at Starrcade '97, where that was the finish was kind of messed up a little bit, but nevertheless, Sting won the title, but then had to give it back. So anyway, so then blah blah blah. He eventually joins the NWO Wolfpack. WCW gets bought out. He goes elsewhere in the independent wrestling. Then finally, in recent years, he finally made his way to the WWE. It was not a good run. It was terrible. The way they used Sting was awful. He didn't win a single match. And then he went to AEW, and now he's still wrestling. He's still like jumping off the top turnbuckle, and he's still very much active. But anyway, this is his original San Francisco toy makers figure. I like it. I like this figure. This is one paint variant. There was also bright green trunks. He also came in a 2-pack with Hulk Hogan, and that was where the green trunks. I've also seen pink trunks, but it's always the same mold. But I like this. Sting. So now, this one's going to be fun, because I looked up a bunch of terrible WCW Gimmicks. And I've got 3 honorable mentions on this because there's just, like I've said, terrible gimmicks. There's just so many of them out there, so many places to go. It's just, you have to wonder, wow, what in the world were they thinking when they came up with this stuff? So, anyway, number 5, I'm going to start with The Renegade. That's right, WCW's answer to The Ultimate Warrior. This was before The Warrior had a short run in WCW, but because The Warrior had been so popular, WCW tried to create their own Warrior with a direct, blatant ripoff. This guy with long hair, he painted half his face in the form of a big R, and he would kind of run the ring and like shake his hair around. He would kind of like act like he was Wild Man, and he wore this like singlet. He had like the arm tassels, and he was well built, and he was kind of like the Ultimate Warrior, even down to the terrible wrestling. But I feel bad because from what I understand, he was actually a real nice guy, and he tried. He tried like heck to get the gimmick over. It didn't happen, and unfortunately, the Renegade is no longer with us. But yeah, that was just awful. It was just terrible. I encourage you, if you like, like terrible gimmicks, I encourage you to go to Peacock and look some of the matches that the Renegade was in, because it was just a blatant Ultimate Warrior ripoff. And Jimmy Hart was his manager, and Jimmy Hart to this day will acknowledge, yeah, it was kind of a Warrior ripoff. Anyway, I moved to number 4. Number 4 was Booty Man. Yep. Booty Man was actually Brutus the Barber Beefcake. It was one of his 150 gimmicks in WCW. But after he became the big brother to Hulk Hogan in WCW, he turned into the Zodiac for the Dungeon of Doom, and he painted his face black and white. He had this wild look, and he was just stupid. But then, when he turned babyface, he said, "Oh, I did that on purpose as kind of a spy for Hulk Hogan to help him defeat the Dungeon of Doom." And then he became Booty Man, Hulk Hogan's best friend, and I don't know what he was supposed to be. He was just basically Brutus the Barber Beefcake without the shears. I guess he was supposed to be a ladies' man, but he was called Booty Man. I don't know. Terrible. Terrible. Okay, number 3 is the Shark. Yeah. Poor John Tenta. John Tenta, I feel so bad for this. John Tenta was the guy that portrayed Earthquake in WWF. But after he was Earthquake in WWF, he went to WCW, and they wanted him to be the Shark. And so, but he had this tattoo of a tiger on his arm. And so Eric Bischoff told him, "Hey, we're gonna turn you into the Shark, but the tiger tattoo doesn't really work with the gimmick." So he went and had the tiger tattooed over. So it wasn't really anything specific. It was kind of a black blob on his arm. And he wore the Shark outfit. He even painted teeth in his beard, and he had this thing, and he was part of the Dungeon of Doom, and it was terrible. I feel so sorry for John Tenta. But yeah, they turned him into the Shark. And then Eric Bischoff said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to use the Shark." So basically, he had his arm tattooed for nothing, for no reason. They decided not to go with the Shark. So then he just wrestled as John Tenta. And then he went to WWF during the Attitude Era and was Golga. Wore a mask and everything, but it was clearly Earthquake. But yeah, the Shark. That's a great gimmick. That's great. Good job, WCW. Number 2 is actually a tag team. And they were a tag team during the early to mid 90s, but It was the Ding Dongs. Yep. There was a tag team called the Ding Dongs. There was Ding and Dong. They both wore masks, and they both had bells, pictures of bells on the back of their trunks. I don't know. From what I understand from different podcasts that I've listened to, that was an idea of Jim Herd, the guy who was in charge of WCW at the time, the guy that was, he was known as the Pizza Hut guy. He was like the CEO of Pizza Hut. Then he was in charge of WCW, and he came up with this idea. Oh, what if we had the Ding Dongs? I move on. Number one of one of the top, most stupidest gimmicks in WCW history, the Yeti. Yep, that's right. He debuted at Halloween Havoc, and I believe it was 1995. But yeah, so at this particular Halloween Havoc, Hulk Hogan was scheduled to wrestle the Giant, but he also had this stupid monster truck sumo match, which was dumb. That match itself should be on this list, but the idea, Hulk Hogan is in one monster truck, the Giant is in another monster truck. They're on the roof of this arena, and they're like pushing each other, trying to be out of the circle like regular sumo wrestlers do, but it's with monster trucks. And I think Hulk Hogan ended up winning, but then they get out of their monster trucks, and suddenly the Giant falls off the building. Yeah, he falls off the top of the... And Hogan's like, oh no! Oh, I gotta get some help! Oh no! So he goes to find help because the Giant apparently has been killed by being thrown off this building. Great stuff. So then, not even an hour later, it's time for the main event. Hulk Hogan versus the Giant, and suddenly the Giant's just fine. He's fine. That's right, he's okay. Hogan comes out, the Giant comes out, Hulk Hogan wrestles the Giant, but then this guy is dressed as a mummy. That's right, a 7-foot tall mummy comes up and starts like doing this, and he starts dry humping Hulk Hogan. They called him the Yeti. Where did they come up with this stuff? I don't know. But it makes for some entertaining content that I can bring to you. There is that. So to review. Oh wait, first of all, I gotta get these honorable mentions in here because there's 3 of them on this list. So one of them was the Rat Master. That's right. He was this chubby guy that was a rapper. And he was the Rat Master. That's it. And then there was Trucker Norman, formerly known as Norman the Lunatic. And then when he went to WWF, he was known as Friar Ferguson and Bastion Booger. But in WCW, one of his gimmicks was Trucker Norman. This poor guy could not get a decent gimmick. I'm sure he was a nice guy, and I feel bad because he's no longer with us, and I know his family loved him, and I'm sure he was a great wrestler, and I'm sure he was well trained, but they just could not give him a good gimmick at all. So then, another honorable mention was the Maestro. That's right, it's supposed to be like, conductor. I remember this guy. He came down to the ring wearing a tuxedo. He had his little tapper stick thing, like tap, tap, tap. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, he was a Maestro. Yep, they're usually wrestlers as well. Anyway, those are some WCW terrible gimmicks. I'm sure there's a lot more. Oh, there's so many more. So many more terrible gimmicks. Oh, I might This might be a continuing series because, eesh, my goodness, awful. Anyway, Sting. Anyway, if you're new here, go ahead and push the like button. Subscribe to the channel. It's not hard. Just push the subscribe. And share on social media if you'd like. That helps me out too. And I will see you next time.